in terms of the biological soundness of it, it sounds plausible a priori that you need to start with a certain number of calories just to get going, right? Your body needs maybe 1,000 calories just to survive. So the first 1,000 calories that you're consuming are not very useful to you to help you to actually start exercising. Then once you are alive, the next calories will start being useful. So in a priori, maybe there was some plausibility to this theory. Certainly was his theory. So that means that he lost his job, so he couldn't do much of anything. He was not doing nothing, otherwise I would not have met him, he would be dead. But he was doing things that was not taking too much effort for him. For example, he was sitting next to a bank of a lake and he was fishing. He was getting a little bit of rice from the government program. He was getting a little bit of meals from his brother. But by the way, he was not really living a full life. He was sort of surviving. And so at the heart of his theory, and I think your question of whether this is true or not is a very interesting question, which certainly came to my mind when I was talking to him. But at the heart of his theory was this purely biological mechanism. And then on top of this biological mechanism, other things sort of crept up, which is, one is the fact that he was not doing anything and that his kids were gone. That made him depressed. So then it gave him very low energy to actually do anything. So even if his theory was wrong, it sort of became trapped in a poverty trap that may have been more of a psychological one, because he was there sitting all alone in his hut, unable to do anything, thinking that he was worthless, therefore in some sense becoming worthless. There are other parts of his stories where we start seeing other bits of poverty trap. For example, what happened with this kid? So the kid who had to drop out of school to start working as a construction worker was actually a bright kid. So that's another place where you see now intergenerational poverty trap, where because the parents are poor, the kid has to drop out of school because he has to go to work, and therefore himself will probably make less money down the line. And that's another thing where we have to ask exactly the same question you were asking before. How plausible is it an isolated example, or is it something that is generalized, that it's actually something like the inability to work for the parents or the lack of income that creates this, that forces kids to stay out of school that could otherwise have gotten an education? That's another kind of place where we can find potentially a poverty trap, where the kid got some schools. He got a few years of school, but maybe not enough for it to be sufficient for him to actually get a good job down the line. So, and for himself, he couldn't work as a construction worker because he was too weak for the basic jobs, which require some strength, and too unskilled for the better jobs, and too old to be an apprentice like his kids. So he was kind of trapped. So what else is happening in his story that you would think, why did they have to, even if we accept the biological mechanism, which I want to go back into in detail in a moment, something else could have happened. So for example, instead of, if we're thinking that his being out of a job is a temporary phenomenon, maybe he could have gotten a loan to sustain his family so that the kid could actually at least stay in school until the time for him is to graduate. Then at least you wouldn't have that intergenerational trap. So that's another. So at the heart of it, we have that biological phenomenon, and then other things sort of creep in that maintains him in this position, that creates the poverty trap. So what I want to do now is to go through the biological story in detail, and then we are going to see how the other thing kind of add up, creep in and create that trap.